All right, let's get started. For this episode, we're going to be discussing Street Fighter 6's balance history and attempting to answer a lot of the common questions that we're getting, such as like why they keep nerfing Zangief and why aren't they buffing characters like Poor Lily or Marisa or Manon. And we're going to kind of talk about where Capcom's head might be at, going through the history of who they're toning down and which characters they seem to favor, etc., etc. So let's go back in time, start at the very beginning, before this game even launched, and talk about the big balance history of Street Fighter 6, the most important ones. There was about like 4 patches, I would say, guys, and there was a beta too. Oh, by the way, I forgot to introduce you guys again. What's up, Mir and Habs? Thanks for joining me for this. Oh my god, professional podcast.
Hi.
Okay.
Absolutely professional. We will not be answering questions like Vesper, where is costume 4? That's for another day.
No, that's a whole other video, guys. Okay, all right. So, if we go back to the beta test, when we first played Street Fighter 6, there was actually some balance patch changes when the game launched that a lot of people noticed because people were fiending the demo and all of that. And I guess the biggest one, Mir, is the Kimberly nerf. That was the biggest one for sure. So Kimberly was a terror during the beta test, and there was some like unofficial tournaments, and Kimberly was like dominating them. And so was Ken too, by the way. But poor Kimberly, the biggest thing they did is they removed her reversal, and that just totally changed the character. And ever since that, we just haven't seen much Kimberly. She wasn't nearly as popular to this day, and she's not used nearly as much in tournament play. So that drastically affected the character before she even had a chance when the game is out. And you know what? I think back to it, guys. You think Capcom maybe heard the outcry? Because so many people were complaining about Kimberly during the beta test, like how strong she was, how annoying she was, her movement speed. Even to this day, people are still complaining about her backwalk animation, and they just nerfed the music on her level.
I wonder who that is.
Yeah. And they've been slowly buffing her up. But what do you guys think? Do you think Capcom didn't even give her a chance, or it was like a knee-jerk reaction?
I think it was definitely a knee-jerk reaction, right? Your game is coming out. You want to really make sure that people are happy, at least for the first few weeks of the game, right? So if people are complaining about Kimberly nonstop during the beta, I think they really didn't think it through too much.
Yeah.
Given some of the power we have for our current characters, it just seems like Kimberly was a little bit of an outlier that caught in the crossfire at the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be on the other side of the fence and say I think we'd be playing a much different game if Kimberly stayed untouched.
Yeah,
and, I'm glad for the changes that have been made to the character.
You're right. It would have been completely different.
Hey, I played the pre-release build. Okay, I was at EGX and I played against very good Kimberly, and I was like, I see how it is.
Yeah, especially like the meta with the first season with JP. It would be very interesting. And Kimberly was already terrorizing JP even in season 1. So if they made, she'd be kind of like Rashid before there was Rashid, because just the rush down with good defensive options would be quite scary. But I guess Capcom is slowly apologized for that. They're slowly tuning her back up. But I do like that they're sticking to their guns with the design philosophy and not giving her a reversal, even though it's kind of unjustified because Rashid's running around. But I do like the idea that just not every character should have a reversal, especially rush down characters. You know what I'm saying? The other big significant changes from the beta, off the top of my head, you guys can remind me if you remember anything, but I do feel like they got rid of some sonic boom loops from Guile, right? From Guile.
Yes, they have. I think the more notable change is, although those sonic boom loops, they were important that they went away. One of the more egregious ones where you would do a loop that would set you up at the perfect distance for Bazooka Knee to hit meaty, and it would like loop that way.
Oh yeah,
and that was removed, and that's good that it was removed because it was way too easy and strong.
Yeah,
but the more notable change, honestly, like that wouldn't have been they would have been strong. But the more important change, in my opinion, is that his Soulbot used to be +4 on hit, right?
Okay,
and now it's +3. And the thing wasn't necessarily that you would get jabs on hit all the time. Was that on counter he would get crouching medium punch every time, which was terrorizing. Like I remember when I was playing at EGX, that was It was like I would do that all the time because Sobat is a good
Oh,
move.
right.
It's really plus, right? So it
Yeah.
obviously made it difficult to contest with DI as well because you had more frames on hit. Now you need a punish counter for that. That was a big change, but I think it was
Okay.
absolutely worth
I don't
it.
remember
I say
that.
as a Guile. I say that as a Guile player because that was really stupid.
Yo, were you playing Jamie during the beta test, or did you get in the beta, or are you 03 boys?
I didn't. I didn't get into any of the beta tests. I applied for each of them and didn't get anything.
You weren't able to
But
experience the Jamie, bro. What
I'm
happened?
glad you brought up Jamie because
Okay.
I think Jamie's existence in the beta really highlights how the beta changes were different from how Capcom's applying their patch philosophy now.
Yeah.
Whereas in the beta, I feel like they really toned down a lot of the characters that seemed too outrageous. But the characters that appeared weak from the onset, they didn't really tune too much, such as
No.
Jamie. I remember everybody was complaining about Jamie being weak in the beta.
Dude, Jamie's one of the first characters I learned too. Yeah, it was rough.
He's fine. Pat on the back.
He's
okay.
Yeah, dude, I remember Shen was playing him on his stream, and he was doing he was beating everybody, and everyone's like, "Oh, Shen, you must really like Jamie. You must be really strong." And Shen's like, "This character's ass." He just started like, "This character's ass. Like no damage. There's no conversion." He was talking about how good Kimberly was, and I remember Momochi, even Momochi, guys, and he's not afraid of lab time here. Okay, this guy's got 20,000 hours in training mode. And even he gave up on Jamie. I remember Oil King went in his chat and he's like, dude, this character sucks, man. This Jamie's so bad. That's what he said. And so it's kind of funny how Jamie ended up, and it turned out that to be true. I mean, that's not always the case, because if you take Luke, for example, everyone thought Luke was the weakest character in the beta. And that was obviously not true when you saw season 1. So not everyone, it's not easy to figure out a character's strength from the get-go, but it is funny how it turned out. I guess one more balance change I want to point out in the beta is Ryu. Ryu actually got nerfed. I think a lot of people forgot about that from the beta test, which is crazy.
Not the Ryu players.
The Ryu players remember. But one of the things I remember they nerfed was his crouching heavy punch used to be much more plus on hit. And therefore, he was able to do drive rush, crouching fierce into standing medium punch, crouching medium punch, like Jury. And he had some really crazy meter dump conversions. I think, Mira, we have some beta combo videos up on the YouTube channel, and I think we still show that. I could take a look back on that.
Yeah, I think we do.
But I wanted to see the DiMaggio.
Just for it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of funny because Ryu actually has one of the strongest meter dumps to this day with his level 3 and the way his uppercuts one hit, heavy uppercut. But with that, man, Ryu would have did some beastly damage. Like, his Jury also has one of the best meter dumps because she can go crouching heavy punch, standing medium, crouching medium punch. But yeah, Capcom held back on poor Ryu. Like, we're so happy seeing Ryu in Street Fighter 6. We're like, oh yeah, we're not going to go through the whole Street Fighter 5 thing where they continue to try to bring Ryu back. But well, look what happened, right?
Well, I think it's interesting to me because we know that they have an internal development team or testing team that, has their own tier list and what they think the characters, how they sit compared to everyone else, blah, blah, and they obviously make balance changes based on that as well.
Yeah.
And that's what every time I feel that a character has gone unnoticed by the development team, like that they didn't buff him enough or that they didn't fix their problems. It always makes me think that maybe there's someone in that testing team that's just cracked with that character.
Yeah,
No,
it's possible.
Maybe this character is good enough. That's always the thought that I have in my head, because we had that interview where they were talking about the Street Fighter 5 development team and how they thought that Alex was the best character in the game.
Yeah,
and I was like, okay,
that was jarring.
That's definitely not what I expected.
Yeah, that was really weird. Yeah,
so who knows?
They're not allowed to, just in case you guys know, the internal testing team, like the battle design team for Street Fighter, they're not allowed to enter tournaments. Like, they have a sign thing, right? Because they would have unfair advantage knowing a character's strengths before everyone else because they're helping design them. So we don't get to see these players actually play. We've just heard the rumors and the legends about how good they are. But I think they did a pretty damn good job, at least with the system, because they didn't change too much. But we'll get into that later. So yeah, that's pretty much the beta test in a nutshell, guys, for Street Fighter 6. To they didn't change too much. The biggest one was definitely Kimberly, and of course we only had what was 6 characters, guys. It was 6, right? It wasn't too many.
Yes.
We had
I
like
believe
Chun-Li,
so, right?
Ken. There was no Jerry. There was Ryu.
Jamie, Ryu, Guile, and
Jamie. Yeah, it wasn't too many.
Kimberly.
Luke.
Oh,
the chat
Kimberly,
says the chat says 8.
Yeah, 8. 8
Eight?
seems more likely.
Yeah. There was Jerry?
Jerry
Oh,
was
damn, I didn't
important.
remember, guys.
Oh yeah. Jury was in there. Yeah.
Yeah, she was.
Luke, Jamie, Jury, Guile,
Kimberly.
Ryu, Kimberly, Ken, and Chun-Li.
Chun-Li.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I do remember we did a little like mini tier list mirror, and strength wise, we felt that Chun-Li and Guile were at the top at the time, right?
Yes, I if you remember, I was a big advocate for Guile being really strong.
Yeah.
While you weren't a believer, and at the same time, I didn't think much of Luke. I was one of the people that
Right.
didn't believe in Luke because
Yeah.
I was like, he's so weird. I was just still thinking of Street Fighter V Luke,
Yeah.
and how Street Fighter 6 Luke was completely different. But that goes to show how a character like Guile can play fundamentally the same.
Yeah.
While Luke was much more, Street Fighter 6, right? And that's why we couldn't see that strength
Yeah.
immediately.
I had I was downplaying Guile. I didn't think Guile was as strong as you did, but I thought Ken and Luke were strong. And I think I don't remember if I released a video talking about why I thought Luke was strong, because I caught a cold during that, so my voice was just done. And I was going over because Luke was just a lot different in Street Fighter 6 than Street Fighter 5. But either way, that's pretty much where we're at for the tier list and balance wise. So then we went through an entire year, guys, of no balance changes. They just let that game, the game rock. And oh boy, man, the first significant balance patch was right after Capcom Cup. Actually, right before we prepped up for this discussion, Mir. We found out it was like right after finals, like a day or two. It was crazy. And they mostly looked at Ryu and Jamie, and they nerfed JP and Luke, but JP was more significant. So for Ryu, off the top of my head, they buffed his Hashogeki. They gave him when they gave him the Hashogeki pressure, the light Hashogeki after the Tatsu. And for Jamie, they gave him the drink after the forward throw. JP, they removed the invincibility from his crouch and heavy punch anti-air, which was a huge nerf. And Luke, I think they made his crouch and mean punch have more recovery or something. Easier to whip punish, but it was still too hard to whip punish. I think that was it, man. So I guess
that's a good summarization.
Oh, okay. I what do you guys think about that though? It's kind of weird. Like, it wasn't the major balance patch, and they released it right after Capcom Cup. It was just kind of weird why they released that patch there. Like, what they were looking for, if the characters needed tuning. A lot of people were nervous too because the patch was really small. Like it was just a strange patch to release. For me personally, I always said that I felt like that patch actually should have came out after EVO, or at least a couple of months before Capcom Cup. I felt like it was so obvious that Luke's crouching mean punch was so overtuned. JP obviously needs some tuning, not necessarily the anti-air though, but he needs some tuning that they need to see before Capcom Cup. And then Ryu and Jamie just suffer for a year. It was just no Ryu or Jamie. So it was kind of weird that came out right after Capcom Cup and before the major balance patch. I don't know. What do you guys think?
The timing of the patch was a little bit random. I do agree it probably should have been earlier. But I think it really was the flair that highlighted Capcom's philosophy going into patching Street Fighter 6 from then on, which is all about normalizing the really weak characters and making the characters that were seen or perceived to be really strong a little bit weaker. Bringing everybody closer together to that mid tier. And I think we can all agree that Ryu and Jamie were always at the bottom of the tier list back in the day, right?
It was pretty rough.
Maybe still. Yeah, so I think that is a good way to look at it, is just normalizing. And here's what's to come, right?
Tell me when you say
Some people might
normalizing.
argue we're
Why
still not
using that
there,
word?
but yeah.
Like, what do you think? Do you think that patch was a waste? Like, what was the point? Why not just wait?
Okay, so I think my opinion is that these are changes that they realized that they were gonna make anyway, and they realized that too late during the previous season to release a mid-season patch.
Oh.
Basically, because they wanted to like not change people's picks for the big tournaments, right?
Yeah.
Like too late into the competitive season. Obviously, if they made the patch late and then all the JP players get killed, it's a little bit unfair, right? So obviously they were like, well, this character needs a change, and that's definitely something that we're gonna do regardless of what else we come up with the season change. And we just had it ready this whole time, but we just couldn't release it because we wanted to maintain the integrity of the competitive season. So immediately after Capcom Cup, it's the perfect moment to drop those because they just were sitting on them anyway, and they give the maximum amount of time for people to get used to at least that aspect of the patch, right? And then later on, when the season patch came out, obviously there were more changes that they had more time to work on because they weren't 100% sure that they were going to implement. That's my thought anyway.
Yeah. I mean,
just something that they wanted to just put in there as soon as possible.
I do respect that they're trying to maintain the competitive integrity, but like I felt like the damage was done. Like we were having top 8s, man, with like 4+ Lukes and JPs. Like it was out of control. It was especially the LCQ. The LCQ was madness, man. It was like every JP that didn't make the Capcom Cup was there at that tournament. And it's like we didn't need any more information for Ryu and Jamie needing a pick-me-up. Pros weren't even using those characters, so I just felt like it was too little, too late. Like I guess this is a whole other discussion, but the not releasing even an emergency balance patch at all and just sticking to it, I think can do some harm as well. But let's fast forward now to after Capcom Cup, it was a couple of months later, and then we finally had the major balance patch. So the season 2 patch, and but they basically looked at every single character. They also wrote their design philosophy for every character, which I like. I love it when they do that, so we can kind of get where Capcom's head's at. We're trying to figure it out what they're looking for, and another thing is that's where we started getting system changes. So let's talk about the system changes, because this was the only time we've actually had big significant system changes besides like Tokido getting Drive Rush Jab nerfed and stuff, or Angry Bird. But besides that, we got system changes to almost every mechanic. So Perfect Parry got more recovery when you tap, so that people can't fish for it and guess it as much. They'll get prone to being more thrown. The hurt box, the throw hurt box is extended, so if someone is holding parry, you can throw them from much further away. They made it so that drive reversal can now be done as a wake up, and they sped it up by 2 frames as a wake up. Drive impact, they left pretty much the same. And for drive rush, instead of going after drive rush itself, they went after specific characters standing light punches that do drive rush jab, like Rashid, Chun-Li, Ken, etc. And am I missing other system changes, guys? Or right?
For the parry, they also reduced the time it takes for you to start regenerating meter after you parry something, so that it becomes like much more reasonable to parry against zoning, for example.
Yeah.
And start building gauge back. That's definitely something that they continue doing for other patches as well, as we'll see.
Yeah,
idea.
Go ahead.
Did you mention that perfect parry damage, once you perfect parry somebody, even the damage you do to their drive gauge also was nerfed quite a bit?
Right, yeah. So when a lot of players, they successfully perfect parry, they'll go into like DI or drain their bar further with the punish counter. So they nerfed that too, so it's not as crazy. It's still good to do, but it's not as insanely punishing as it was before. And then they nerfed back throws. They made it so the swings weren't as huge. When you back throw, you don't get Oki on a lot of characters.
In the corner, I think it was.
Yeah, in the corner, sorry. Yeah, in the corner you used to be able to, but once again, that's not going after perfect parry, where you perfect parry and then back throw somebody. They try to make the swings not go so hard. And I guess what I should mention too, the first 2 months, I think it was after Evo, what I was talking about with Tokido, where they made it so that when you whiff a light and buffer into drive rush, it will still happen on whiff and drain 3 bars. That was an emergency nerf, and there was this weird option to select where you can use the controller macro button to tech throws without whiffing throw, but they got rid of that too.
Mm-hmm.
But pretty much, yeah, the system changes only came once a year, pretty much. Now for and by the way, I think those system changes were really good. They were subtle, but I think they were all good, all of them, especially the drive, the perfect parry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the changes themselves, they were pretty significant. Like, they weren't flashy, I think is probably the better way of saying it. Aside from the wake up drive reversal, which at the time people still didn't think much of, but over time started using more and more, especially certain characters that really struggle for reversals benefited quite a bit from that. But the parry changes, especially the extra recovery is really noticeable, because it allows you to kind of like pressure people in a much safer way. Like, you don't have to commit to the walk up throw as much as you did before, and it's noticeable in particular for some of the slower characters.
Perfect parry was getting out of hand, man. Like, a lot of pros were complaining about during the last few months, and we're like, hey, look, this is a problem now, and it's going to be an even bigger problem in the future. Like, it was just so much fishing for perfect parry, because yeah, you can throw the opponent, but the way pros were using it was very smart. They were using it at a distance. Like, they used their turn and they'd fish for it, and they'd be too far to be thrown. So the way Capcom nerfed it, I think, was perfect. It was like probably my favorite change. I'm not gonna lie though, like I wish they went harder on the drive rush, nerfing drive rush a little bit more. But we can see from this that Capcom really likes the way drive rush is. Like, they want the game to be aggressive like this, and I feel like they can go a little harder on that. But besides that, the wake up drive reversal change too, I didn't see coming. Like, that was something I didn't think of, and that was one way they were trying to go after throw loops. It didn't help too much, but it's another option now that players have to watch out. I don't know. What do you think happens with the system changes that they did?
I would describe a lot of these system changes as adding intentionality to your defense. And I'm very happy with them. I think, although the drive reversal didn't really help that much with throw loops, I think it had the effect of helping characters without invincible reversals.
Yeah.
So that I'm very happy about.
Yeah,
And just
Kimberly
the
is
fact
awesome.
you can't mindlessly autopilot defense as much anymore is, I think, really healthy for the game. And moving in that direction, the more we move in that direction, is really healthy.
Yeah.
So I think they nailed that on the head with those changes. So yeah, I was very happy to see that.
Right.
And I hope they go further in this direction when it comes to offense in the future.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about the characters in the balance patch. So we did a lot of wish list videos before the patch came out, and I was pretty surprised on which characters they went really hard on, which characters they didn't touch much, and which characters remained weak for season 2. So some characters like I really didn't expect were, a lot of people didn't think they were gonna nerf Luke, because he was like the poster boy. He didn't receive significant nerfs in Street Fighter V that really changed the meta. So it was safe to assume that, Luke, they weren't gonna go too hard on him. And but they did. They went really hard on Luke, and to the point where almost everyone has dropped the character. Even the best Luke players dropped, like Chris Wong, for example. We still have Noah. We still have Noah, and we still have some good Luke players out there that are doing good, like recently. But the what's it called? The pick rate of Luke in tournament play significantly dropped. It was like it's night and day. So he was like one of the biggest for where he was in season 1 to where he is now, a significant drop, a couple of tiers. And JP, man, oh boy, did they go hard on JP as well. That was another really big thing. They went after JP, like they went overboard. The anti-air was like a big nerf, but then they went after like the scaling, the meter gain, his level 2, his
amnesia.
So it's almost amnesia. They went after every single angle of JP, and JP's pick rate, I think, was even more significant than Luke. Dropped off. There was like almost no JPs at all, including the best JP players. We just got Juicy Joe now. and even I guess Ryusei was still trying him out. Kakeru's not even playing him. There's like a massive drop off on those two characters. Those ones were like really really hard. And then we had some characters like Ken, who was well, I guess it depends who you ask, but Ken he stayed pretty much the same. They did go after some small things like his target combo and maybe his like heavy Jinrai kicks, but he mostly stayed intact how he's played. And then there's other characters like Chun-Li. DJ was another significant nerf. Yeah, DJ, they hit him really hard, and yeah, man, DJ. I guess I don't want. I'm just gonna talk about and then there's characters like Honda and Marisa that got some nerfs as well, and they tried to buff them in different areas, and they tried to make them. Basically, Capcom was in a pickle because they had a situation where they were dominating the low ranks, but they were having troubles in the high ranks, and they didn't know how to tune them further. And then there was a Lily mirror. I think Lily is an absolute mess. I think Lily still is a mess. And
I could talk about that for hours.
Yeah, I know Mir is dying to do a discussion video on Lily, but yeah, so it's kind of all over the place. I sorry guys, I was supposed to summarize all of this, but I kind of just went off the rails. So I don't know. Take it away. Go talk about something about these characters, and we'll go from there. Because I tried to summarize it, but I want to go one character and talk about more at a time.
I think not with this big patch, we see the three main philosophies that are sort of manning the ship in Capcom's patches.
Okay.
One, nerfing the top tiers that they consider unhealthy for the game. Because notice, even if some of the characters have the same power level, such as let's say Luke, JP, Ken, at that point, they don't nerf all three with the same strength.
Right.
That's philosophy one. Philosophy two, buff some of the bottom tiers, which they think require some effort and are difficult to use, such as Ryu and Jamie.
Yeah.
And keep the same or nerf some of the mid or bottom tier characters that are termed scrub killers, such as Honda or Marisa.
Okay, first...
so I think... those three things are the three philosophies that I see at play here when I'm looking at these patches. Sure.
Could you define unhealthy, like what that means?
So here's
what Capcom thinks that means, I guess is a better way of saying it.
I think an unhealthy top tier in Capcom's eyes is a character that is dominating the game in such a fashion where most people are complaining about them, and they have a place or several places in top 8s in every single tournament. So you have your Luke, you have your JP, you have your DJ.
Are you saying characters that are like... So you're talking about popular characters then? Or that we're seeing too much?
Popular characters.
Okay.
Yeah, we're seeing too much of them. But again, it doesn't always apply to every single character that falls within that description. So I think Capcom just wants certain characters that are strong to remain strong, while others shouldn't occupy that space.
There's definitely some discrepancies.
Really hard to define. Yeah, it's not consistent.
Yeah,
I feel like the reason why that is, why there is this discrepancy, is that they really treasure a certain playstyle around which Street Fighter is built. That's why characters like Ken and Akuma get to stay top tier.
Yeah.
Because they want the classic Shoto, like Fireball Shoto, to be the ideal playstyle for a healthy Street Fighter. In their minds, that's what I think are aiming for. And they feel like when it came to Luke, they saw how much he was using the game mechanics to his advantage, like drive rush and stuff, and they saw a character that was abusing his normals a little bit too much to be just like a quote-unquote normal Shoto. And they wanted probably to move the playstyle of the character more in that direction, but they kind of like overdid it, and they just destroyed his damage, which ended up making him, like not desirable to play comparatively.
Yeah.
And that was a mistake, but I think that's the idea. It's like they really want that solid, versatile character to be the ideal gold standard that everyone should aspire to. Everyone as in every character in the game, right? Because if you think about it, Guile, it got a few changes, like a few nerfs, but overall he stayed the same because he's kind of like the charged version of that character. He ends up being more of a zoner.
Yeah.
But he's still like overall all rounder. And to me, it seems that Capcom is really unwilling to budge too much from that, and that's a big part of their design decisions. This is for the Shotos, like the better, stronger characters. But then obviously, you have to look at the other characters like Zangief, Honda, Marisa, like all these characters, how they have been balanced and how that's harder for them to place just because they're so different from the standard that they have, and you can tell that they struggled a little bit more with those. I think they don't have as clear of an idea of what they want them to do.
Mm-hmm.
So something I want to say about that, I think what Mirror's saying is exactly what Capcom was thinking. But I think in reality, if we're talking about abusing the system mechanics, and we're saying Luke is doing this, or we're not saying Ken is doing the same thing, I don't know what game we're playing, right? So I agree, they probably went in with that mentality, but the application universally was just they're botched, right?
Yeah.
If we're going
Yeah,
to
yeah.
say one character does it, let's do it to the other one, right?
Yeah, let's.
Because one last thing, I was actually really happy that Luke got nerfed because I thought, okay, this is really nice. We're going to standardize the Shoto so that we can distribute all the Luke players among all three and have a healthy relationship between these characters.
Yeah.
But basically, not touching Ken and then introducing Akuma, which we'll get into later,
Oh yeah.
basically undid that whole plan.
Yeah.
So I don't know where we're going with this.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because for Ken, if you look at his patches, right, or patch notes, there's some of his most abusable strategies and most recognizable strategies that were hurt by the changes, right? Like the fireball with extra scaling, like the OD fireball with extra scaling, is obviously all intended for Fireball Drive Rush, which is like trademark Ken move. OD Fireball Drive Rush is so powerful, right?
Yeah.
And that's a good example of a character that gets hit by a damage nerf and it doesn't matter because the reason why Ken is strong is not because his damage is high in those situations. Like those situations are all built around the idea of I bring you to the corner and that's where I play, right?
Yeah.
Which is not necessarily the same for Luke in the sense that Luke does rely on his mid-screen combos as well for doing damage. So they applied the same philosophy to both characters, and it just so ends up it ended up being that one character just doesn't rely on the things that were nerfed as much as the other. So one fell completely off the charts, and then the other one just stayed the same, more or less.
Yeah. Like, okay. Would you guys say that the well-rounded characters should be the strongest characters in the game? Do you guys agree with that philosophy?
I mean,
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
I think they are the strongest by virtue of the fact that they have the most balanced matchups. So, like, if you're talking about a matchup chart, then they would be, the best characters. But I don't think it's fair that a well-rounded character would would have better matchups than a character that is, more polarizing, basically. I would expect a character that is more extreme to have very good matchups and very bad matchups. Well, I mean, I say very good and very bad. I don't expect 9-1s because that's just bad design, but you know what I mean, right? Like more.
Do you guys think that
wingy match?
Do you guys think that every character should have a bad matchup?
Can I just answer your first question?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. No.
My answer would be I don't want a well-rounded character to be automatically the best character. I want a well-balanced character to be the best character.
Okay.
And those two are not the same thing.
Okay.
Right? You can have a character that is like, I don't know, Geef. I mean, that's not a good idea. Kimberly.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say she's not well-rounded, but if she was well-balanced, I wouldn't mind a character like that being top tier.
Okay.
You know?
Okay. Because
I think it's fair to say, yeah.
Well, what were you gonna say, Mir? Because I'm gonna talk about something else now.
No, what I was saying, I think it's fair to say what Haps just mentioned right now. I feel like is pretty much, well, not to diminish what he said, but basically saying, like a good design is better than a bad design, which I agree with in concept, because you don't have to be a well-rounded character to be a good design, right? Like there's some characters that are interesting because they lack tools, but they have other very powerful tools to compensate for that, right?
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of striking that balance. Like there's some characters that do that to an extreme where it ends up being not very fun Honda, I think, in that sense, is a fail. Or Lily, actually, is a better example. Lily is a failure of that extremization of design,
Bro.
because you have a character that is not fun to play against, and a character that's not fun to play.
Yeah. Lily is definitely a mess, and I like when we were doing our wish list, we were asking for some significant rework, like rework on her design, but Capcom didn't do that at all. They simply tweaked it and hoped that the system changes would help her, like adding the drive reversal to wake up, and it turned out that it didn't. But the also to you guys were talking about characters that have weaknesses and their strengths will help overcome it. I think DJ is a perfect example of a character that was so absurd in season 1, but he actually had many weaknesses. But since they nerfed his strengths in season 1, he also significantly dropped on the tier list for season 2. Like, he's a character that he doesn't have a cancelable crouching medium kick, or he doesn't have an invincible level 1 and many non-cancelable buttons. So a character like this was so powerful in season 1 because his damage output was through the roof, and his driver speed was so absurd that it helped overcome everything. But because of all the changes, and then on top of that, his weaknesses are now much more apparent. And Chun-Li is similar, but not nearly as bad as DJ. So DJ's got hurt really, really bad. They added scaling to like all of his core moves and combos, and even got rid of his mid-screen combos. So that was kind of I would say a miss from Capcom, trying to going a little too hard without putting into account everything else. It's much harder to balance a character like DJ that already has big weaknesses compared to a character like Luke and Ken, who are well-rounded. You know, because you kind of just tweak it here and there and everything. All the notches are in the middle, but DJ is kind of all over the place. Like, something has to compensate, right? It's hard.
Well, kind of what we were saying before about them applying the same method to multiple characters that don't have the same strengths, right? If you think about it, DJ got the same nerf hammer as Ken and Luke in the sense that they nerfed his damage, but DJ's damage is a big part of his identity, right? Because that was, like you said correctly, one of the big reasons why he was successful.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, a character like Ken is like, yeah, okay, my Fireball Drive Rush does less damage, but I still bring you to a corner in one combo.
Exactly.
And then it doesn't matter anyway, right? So
exactly.
In that sense, it was a failure to not apply a more nuanced balancing solution. And it's probably because, I mean, they couldn't figure it out themselves. Like, I'm sure that they didn't do it with malice, right? Like ill will. They obviously wanted to create a balanced game, but they just ended up not actually hitting the mark.
I think there's something else with Street Fighter 4 DJ. That was pretty rough, dude. That standing heavy punch, forces stand, whiffs on crouchers. Never forget.
Hey, only half the cast, okay?
But I think Chun-Li and maybe Blanca are good examples of characters where like they did have some weakness before and they slightly toned them down and they're still being used. I guess Chun-Li was never really popular to begin with, though, tournament-wise. But Blanca, we're still seeing some Blanca, right? And they added a lot of scaling to his stuff. And there's some characters where like I guess they just felt like they're in a good spot where they received barely any changes, like Jury, even though she won Capcom Cup. So there's some characters that kind of stayed in the same spot. We talked about JP, right? JP's significant nerfs. They went after everything. Combo scaling. That was like another example.
They're like the biggest characters, the most notable characters that did not get hit very much and stayed good the whole time are Gao and Cammy, right? I mean, I would say those two are the top two characters. That
they went after Cammy's side switch, but she still gets side switch, just not as much damage. And they went after her anti-zoning.
Yeah,
like a lot of characters anti-zoning. They didn't want them to be able to do it on reaction, but yeah, she's still fun. She still turned out fine. So I guess she's still
a strong character, right? Like, I mean, even after the nerfs, she's very popular too.
So the last category of characters would be the characters that are like scrub killers, the characters that like destroy low ranks. but they have
Yeah.
higher problems. And that Marisa and Honda are like two big ones. And for Marisa and Honda, they had to buff certain things and nerf other things. For Marisa, the big one was nerfing her level 3. They made it so because her level 3 is really unique. It brings you to the. Is there any other level 3 like that brings you instantly to the corner? I don't think so, right?
Offhand, I can't think of one.
Yeah, Marisa's like one of the only ones. No matter where she hits you, she puts you in the corner. And they got rid of the Oki, where she can checkmate you. That was a huge thing of Marisa, was like, she hit you at level 3, the opponent's burned out, checkmate, and they lose the match. None, guys? And Honda, they had to nerf headbutt and butt slam, but also buff them in different ways. And Honda's pretty much in the same spot, but maybe they were successful on the lower ranks Honda, but I'm pretty sure Honda still smashes low ranks. But I haven't checked the numbers. Those characters are tricky.
Like, the solutions for Honda's situation, I guess, they were the correct way of approaching it, in the sense that they didn't go after the raw power of the move. They just made them less annoying to deal with. Like, when you properly scouted out that the move was going to happen, it makes it easier for you to do something about it, right? Like punishing Honda or getting a better situation out of it. But they didn't say, okay, now the headbutt is like -12 on block or something, right? Like, they just basically made it so that it's a less frustrating matchup to play against, because if you correctly have a read, you can do something about it. More or less, that's what they did, right? Because already before, we kind of like saw the writing on the wall that the whole matchup was going to be whether or not you can perfect parry those attacks.
Yeah.
But that's a little bit too polarizing, because you either perfect parry something or you don't. Yeah. Right? So like, you have a complete swing in situation there. So instead, what they did is that they looked at the other solutions, like neutral jumps and stuff, for those moves, and made them more reliable, which is a good way of doing it. It's just that they didn't want to then make the rest of the character too much stronger, because I feel like they were afraid that they were going to run the same situation again. So like, they'd rather have them be a little bit weaker.
Yeah. And Marisa is a strange case, because it's kind of the result of she wasn't doing super well tournament wise, but she's still really popular and really easy to play, and like I said, destroys low rank. So Capcom tried, but it was unsuccessful with her. And not to mention, as new characters get added to the meta, certain characters get worse and worse because of it, especially the grapplers like Manon and Lily. So I guess a weird thing here is Zangief. So there's characters that are being like ignored pretty much, like Lily and Manon. Capcom doesn't know what to do with those characters, and a lot of their notes were like bug fixes and stuff, like trying to get Manon's level 2 to work. Like, would you even consider that a buff if they're just trying to fix something? And then and then we have Zangief, where they just went completely overboard, and they went so overboard with Zangief. Would you guys say he's probably the most buff character of season 2?
Yes.
Zangief? What do you think, Mayor?
I mean, he definitely strikes me as the one that's
Ryu or Zangief
fundamentally changed the most, in the sense of like the gameplay that he has right now is just so obviously effective, when before it was so much less effective. Like, you can very easily see the power shift, because the character didn't change the way it was played, right? Like, you still play exactly the same, you just see how everything is so much better now, because basically they took everything and they were like, now everything is better.
Yeah,
that's what they did.
I think they did change it, because that's why I'm saying that they changed his archetype. They went so overboard on his normals that and grapplers have good normals, but they made it so that he doesn't even need to rely on his SPD anymore, and you can just destroy players with just his buttons now. We just Itazan is the most perfect example, because it's recent, where he just has medium punch, man. If all the other buttons on his controller was broken, he wouldn't even notice, dude. He just won a major, but that button alone is absolutely wild.
My point is, before you had to use your normals, right? But now it's not like it feels bad to use them, right? It's like, oh, I'm not throwing my opponent, I'm doing something wrong. It's like, now they feel like they match the level of the command throw, which you could argue is a bad decision in the sense that Zangief's always been scary because his command throw is the scariest option that he has, as opposed to everything else. So like maybe matching the power level of the command throw is a bad idea, and that's kind of like another discussion entirely. But it's like that's what I mean by this in the sense that he plays the same, is that they didn't give him a new tool. They just made everything that he had so much more powerful that now it like quote unquote feels good to use them.
Yeah, Capcom has to.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Habs. I was just gonna say that Capcom has to be careful with grapplers. They're aware of that, but I just don't understand, looking at Lily and Manon's changes, why Zangief got such special treatment compared to the other grapplers. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, go ahead, Habs. Doesn't make any sense.
I want to take that a step further, right? We're talking about, Honda and Marisa, which can be deemed scrub killers. They were toned down. That's a philosophy. Okay, sure. That's how they want their game to run. They want the characters that just stomp noobs to be really weak. Okay,
Yeah.
I understand. I may not agree, but I understand. But then again, we have the symptom of these changes are not distributed equally, because we can argue Geef is a terror at the lower ranks,
Oh yeah.
like just grabbing, and like people don't know what to do to beat him. So they going the other direction is inconsistent.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good word to describe these Capcom patches. Inconsistent in several ways. Yeah, as far as Geef playing differently, yeah, I can see both of your points. It's he definitely has a lot more freedom to just do. I think that's a good way to think about it. Before, as Mir was saying, he was forced to play a certain way, but now he really can pick and choose. And I think that's just a symptom of him being super strong.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like in general, Zangief is the sort of character that should be limited because of how scary the throw is, right? It's like you don't want to be doing strikes because you'd rather do the throw, but because the throw is so scary, that's how you build your entire gameplay. But instead now it's like, I don't have to do the throw because everything is equally scary, which is probably not the right decision. And I'm sure that, we'll see this change soon.
Yeah. It's like I said, that's why we're talking about those discrepancies, because like we have characters that are like they're giving a small pick me up, like Jamie, for example, and then like Zangief is just out of control. It's just pages long. And then now we can already see when we're going forward and talk about the other balance changes, now they're trying to get Zangief back under control. So it's just funny, like seeing, obviously it's really difficult to balance a fighting game, but it's just kind of funny seeing just such weird swings on the even the same characters that have the same archetype, like grapplers, and seeing the differences between how much work they put into balancing Lily and Manon compared to Zangief. It's like really, it's really out there.
Is this too risky? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Perhaps.
Yeah, I will say, I think, and I think everybody is thinking this. We might as well say it more clearly. I think these Geef buffs were not intended completely by Capcom, because I think Geef and Jamie are two characters they're very scared of making strong. Right? That's why they're slowly buffing them. And with Jamie, you see they're really being careful and taking their time. And I think they would have applied the same philosophy to Geef. I just think they didn't realize how far this would go with the changes they gave him. I think they expected him to be relatively mid-tier, but didn't really calculate that well, I would say.
Yeah, that's actually more or less what I wanted to say, in the sense that you can tell by the sweeping changes that they made to literally everything that he has, that they felt like those moves needed to perform better overall. Like, as in, we're going to make a change to the whole character because his drive meter economy is not good enough. That's what you read by looking at the patch notes, right? You look at all the drive damage and, recovery changes, and you go like, okay, this character, according to Capcom, needs more powerful, like drive economy, so they can use its drive rush more, so they can threaten the opponent more. But what ends up happening is that because it was applied to literally everything, it doesn't make it so that you have to specifically go after what was buffed to, improve your playstyle. You just play the same, and all of a sudden your opponent has got no meter after you standing medium.
You're burnt out
so
so
like,
fast.
oh, that's pretty convenient.
I will say that I feel like Zangief as a character takes advantage of the system mechanics way better than Manon and Lily do. Like
Yeah,
drive
I
rush
agree.
and perfect parry and everything. Zangief just does. He's just inherently better with it, how he's designed. So it just made it that much crazier when Capcom tried to buff him. But let's talk about the opposite though, because I feel like Ryu, I feel like that their intention was to bring Ryu to the top. I look at Ryu's notes and they're even more thorough than Zangief. Zangief, they had a plan. They're like, let's really buff his buttons. But with Ryu, they wanted to buff everything. They buffed all of his specials, all of his buttons, right? His combos, his pressure, supers, the Denjin stock got reworked, all of that. Very significant buffs. And at the time of reading it, I thought Ryu was the most buffed character for season 2. Fast forward now, yes, we got a major win from Kusanagi, but Ryu is like, just besides Kusanagi and Semi, there's no Ryu. So, and there's Paladin too, but Paladin's like using Nakuma now as well, and Kami. So what happened there? Like, why did Ryu miss the mark again this season? Are you guys just gonna say Akuma?
Well, damn, you called me out. I think, I think if Akuma wasn't released so shortly after, around this time, I think Ryu would have been in a really good spot. But is again the same problem I pointed out earlier. I guess the reverse of Luke. Luke got weaker, Ryu got stronger, but in the end, it doesn't matter if there are two other characters which are considered well-rounded who just outperform both of them in every way. You know. Oh, you play Ryu to throw fireballs? Well, Akuma can do that better. You want to play offense and do a lot of damage? Well, Akuma can do that better.
Yeah.
So, I think the Ryu changes were really good. Maybe not enough, but
which is
there's
crazy.
No point.
Because it was like some of the longest notes was Ryu. Even the Ken downplay army was already ready to rock and roll. They're like, look at the notes, they're like, Ken's got to be the weakest shonen now. Like, it's already begun. Like, I don't know. What do you think happened with Ryu Mir? Like, why is this character just destined to not be used?
It's interesting because what that means, right? By looking at the notes, even without considering Akuma, because they buffed literally everything, but the character is still not enough. Because like right now, right? If we were to rate Ryu, I think most people, even though obviously they would place Akuma above him, they would also place him below Ken, right? Like they would still not say that Ryu matches the Ken's strength,
right?
Which actually makes me think that because he got so many buffs to everything, he actually lacks a tool. And the way I would put it is that it's not that he's not the character. How can I put this? He's still playing a Shoto gameplay, and he's well rounded, of course. But he doesn't use the universal mechanics as well as a character like Ken, right? Like his kit is somehow not as well integrated in the game as well as Ken, because obviously they share many tools, so like in many ways they would have to be similar, right? But yet Ryu is so much weaker, or well, I mean, maybe not so much weaker, but weaker for sure. And so maybe the next change that we'll have to make is actually just try and radically change the way he approaches, like Street Fighter 6. Because Ryu, if you think about it, yes, he has strong conversions thanks to Drive Rush, and he has high damage, right? I mean, that's more or less his thing. When he spends a lot of meter, like his meter dump is very strong.
Yeah.
But it's like little Street Fighter, he's not very good at. Like, is profoundly unexceptional, right? Dude. Like everything he does is like the worst version of someone else, and that's probably the big issue. So like, you either give him a way to cheat his way out of playing Street Fighter, kind of like how Ken does OD Fireball Drive Rush, or whatever else, and immediately puts you in the corner. So you either give him a cheaty way, like a cracked Drive Rush Stenny Haybush or something, or basically you have to make at least one of his tools better than everyone else's, because there's no reason, especially now that Akuma is in, because now I have to bring Akuma. Now that Akuma is in, you have to, like, you imagine you pick Ryu because, at least his zoning is okay, and then Akuma's got no hands. It's like, what the heck is going on with
that? Don't worry, we're gonna get into that. But like, dude, they tried this with Street Fighter 5. They gave Ryu new moves. They gave him Donkey Kick, They gave him actual new special moves, and it still didn't help. And I feel like Ryu's was a bigger mess in Street Fighter V because they made his buttons so specific. But in this, they're more streamlined in Street Fighter 6. So I do feel like Ryu could be saved, but it's just a weird, tragic thing that Ryu has suffered since like vanilla Street Fighter 4, I guess, when they nerfed Daigo. They nerfed Ryu. They nerfed Daigo.
I mean, the bottom line of what I was trying to say is just that Ryu is designed to be profoundly mediocre at everything he does in Street Fighter 6, which is so strange. Like, the only thing that he has that is powerful is his damage. But again, it's not all the time, right? It's not like Ryu hits you with crouching medium kick into something and you explode. He has to spend so much bar
it's
to
a
really
meter
make
dump.
it count.
Yeah, man.
So basically, if you want to compare it to a character like Ken, right? It's like, okay, well, Ken also doesn't have high damage all the time. Yeah, but Ken touches you, you're in the corner instantly. And then he does a lot of damage, right? But Ryu doesn't have that because he's built to be more like the neutral base Shoto. But he doesn't even have the best fireball. A Shogeki neutral is not useful. That's his like best feature, basically, right? Like, you would want to use a Shogeki because that's like the thing unique to him. But it doesn't help him in his element.
Was he the first character designed in this game?
Do you think they started with Ryu? It's him or Luke, right?
Yeah, it's like him or Luke. So they start off with Ryu, and they're like, okay, this is like the balanced character of Street Fighter 6. He's average drive rush, average this, that, and they're like, okay, let's deviate and put Ken more as aggressive, right? Speed, Akuma, everything. Luke was what? Buttons, right? So I don't understand how like Ryu just keeps ending up in this spot. It's so weird.
I want to say that we have to be careful in giving, not Ryu specifically, but if we're saying, oh, Ryu is not successful because he doesn't have these neutral skips or really like, I don't know, Neanderthal offense that Ken has. So let's give him to that. Well, let's not turn him into Ken, right? I think it's a two-way street. We have to standardize both ends of the spectrum. We have to make Ryu strong, but we have to keep Ryu and tone down Ken and Akuma.
Well, look at Zangief, right? They tried doing that and they changed his archetype, right? So that's the result.
Well, I agree with Haps's idea here, right? Obviously, we don't want Ryu to become top tier degenerate because for some reason he has to be top tier. Obviously, he doesn't have to be top tier. The point is more that he has to. You need to have a reason to pick Ryu over other characters, right?
Yes.
Which is the issue that we're having right now.
Yes.
There's no reason to pick Ryu because
100%.
His Fireball's worse than Akuma.
Agreed.
His Rushdown is worse than Ken.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't have as many tools as Terry. Spoilers, he's not come out yet, but he will come out later.
He'll be released soon.
Luke, at least he's got, like really good normals. Okay, his damage is not very high, but like literally no reason to pick Ryu aside from I want to play Ryu, which is a problem. I think if they manage, and they think they were going the right direction with the whole Ashogeki thing, if they manage to find a niche for him that is interesting and makes him play in a way that is different but also effective, then that's really what they should double down.
Dude, even if Dan
it's just very hard when he's
game,
supposed to be the all-rounder, and then you have all these other characters that are like a more specific version of Ryu, and like it just ends up being mediocre because he's not unique.
Hell yeah, dude! Like if Dan came out in this game, people would play Dan over Ryu because at least Dan is there to show off. Like this Ryu would still be suffering. Like it's just I don't know. It's just crazy with this character. All right, let's finally move on to the other balance patches here, and let's talk about. There's only 2 more left after this. The rest are like bug fixes and stuff. So. The first one was after we got, Akuma and Bison. With Bison's release, we got an emergency nerf to Akuma already. I believe they nerfed his teleport. Something about how he side switches characters with his teleport. And they nerfed his air fireball a little bit, making it easier to hit Akuma before the fireball hits you. And with Zangief, off the top of my head, they nerfed his standing medium kick, was it?
Yeah, they did.
I think they reverted most of the changes to it. Yeah, like the hurt box in particular.
Oh, it was so funny too because Zangief players were like, "It's over." like the character's done, and then you saw the hitbox change, and it was like a sliver. It was like nothing. It's over, bros. Yeah. So and then Zangief just continued to do really well. Kobayashi at the very beginning, and then here we go with Zangief, and then fast forward a little bit more, and then the Terry patch. So this is very, very recent. It was only like last month. They went after Zangief again, another emergency nerf. So he's received 2 emergency nerfs. I'm getting like Abigail vibes now, by the way, guys. And what did they nerf? They nerfed his forward medium kick, his headbutt scaling. Anything else? You guys remember? Are you checking the notes, man?
I'm trying to.
They went harder this time. That's the important.
Forward medium kick went from -3 to -4, so it's unsafe and not plus after driver anymore. You have to space it correctly. And the headbutt has extra scaling, but is slightly more plus, so that you can come into crouching medium punch if you want to. So that it's easier to go into level 2. Yeah, those are the literally only 2 changes that he got.
Right. And then they changed. They apparently nerfed Bison's knee press, but it's pretty much the same still, just visually easier to tell.
Basically, it's the same as far as punishment's concerned, like for spacing, but it's easier for characters to contest Bison afterwards because overall the pushback has been reduced, basically.
Right. And then, so besides those nerfs, then we also have apology buffs, emergency buffs. And
well, actually, before the buffs, to continue on the nerfs, Guile got his meter.
Who cares about Guile, man? So the buffs.
That's what I said. I was like, this doesn't change anything. And people were like, no, Guile's dead.
Guile's dead? That's good.
Oh, boy.
So the apology buffs was actually characters I never expected. So JP, they're trying to bring him back because he's just not being used. So they almost completely brought back his anti-air, his crouching heavy punch. It's just 1 frame off now from being exactly what it was before. So you see this it never trades now. So that's really good. They brought back a lot of his juggle combos, just except for the double DI level 2. And they gave him some new sauce as well. And DJ, they buffed. They buffed his light punch target combo. They buffed his level 1 usage and his conversions from the OD sway back. Was there any other? Oh, Luke. They're trying to bring Luke back as well. The pushback on his lights, which also I think I accidentally nerfed him in some ways too, though. But yeah, they're trying to bring. They're trying to bring Luke back. And am I missing anyone? That's it, right? Those are like the 3 significant ones. But they
more or less.
Dalsum got some buffs.
Oh yeah, Dalsum's getting buffed. Right.
No, I remember now. Ed got some buffs.
Ed got some buffs.
Super R2 nerfed by reducing the Super Art gain, but Super Gauge gain.
Yeah.
But they buffed a bunch of other things that he had, like his standing heavy kick. I think his jumping heavy kick. Jumping heavy, more active frames, and what was it? Oh, Psycho Blitzes got more pushback.
So Ed is more like he came out right at the end of season 1, so it's kind of like this is overdue that he has to be taken a look at. So I don't know if he really counts as Ed being on Capcom's radar right now, but definitely in terms of nerfing characters, they're definitely looking at Zangief, they're looking at Akuma, and they're looking at Bison. And for characters that are getting buffed, they definitely want to bring back. They're looking at JP, and they're looking at Luke, and they're looking at DJ. Those are like the main big names on their spotlight right now. Can I just give us an idea where Capcom's head is at on which characters they're not happy with from the previous patch? So I guess to summarize, what do you guys think about that's the whole patch history right now? We're probably not going to see any more until after Capcom Cup.
So I wanted to say something general as well. We're talking about characters going up or down, but something that Capcom has been really careful about is making moves or target combos that nobody uses viable or necessary.
Yeah.
I think that's something they really care about. With Juri and Ryu, giving them their tanker combos becoming more useful. With Luke giving some of his OD properties more use, such as a DDT.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate, DJ as well. I really appreciate that they're trying to make every part of a character's kit have some sort of use.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As far as what you just mentioned about which characters are on the radar or not, I am concerned about some of the direction these nerfs are going. For example, when I first read the Akuma nerf, I saw, oh, Fireball nerf. That makes sense. He has no hands. Is a ground fireball stronger than Ryu's? They're correcting their mistake. No, it was the air fireball.
Yeah.
So it makes me think that Capcom is not quite sure what the problem is here, and it makes me concerned for the future.
Dude,
Maybe they know way too well. That's the other concerning
we
part.
went straight to Rashid and we bursted out laughing when we read Rashid's
there was
notes.
no level 2.
It was absolutely wild. You know, like what? You know, it's crazy. They left Rashid the same. So it's season 3 is gonna be really hard to
I'd like
predict.
to mention though, like it looks like we're being really negative, but I want to kind of like say something in favor of Capcom. And I think one of the characters that kind of like went under the radar, people have not been talking about her very much, that got buffed and is like in a decent spot. I would say it's like not particularly powerful, but it's Aki. Aki came out and was kind of like, whatever, right? And she got buffed, and people were like, oh my god, there's so many buffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't end up being top tier. But I feel like you look at the character now, and yeah, she does have some matchups where she struggles, of course. But I feel they did a good job with her, right? Like, I mean, she's obviously better than before. Yeah, the Aki players, for the most part, are pretty happy about the, like the improvements. And no one is like, oh my god, now Aki is top tier and is ruining the game, right? So as far as characters that have been balanced, I mean, I feel that she's in a good spot. Actually, Chun-Li too, in the other sense, in the sense that now Chun-Li, people don't think she's overpowered, but they don't think she's too weak either. So it's kind of like those struck a decent balance for mid tiers. If we're talking about higher tiers, I mean, they're obviously very happy with some characters being there. I mean, Guile has always been like slightly tweaked every time by nerfing a little bit, but they obviously don't want to cut his legs off, so they're pretty happy with him. And I guess Gal is special because he's really annoying, and people don't like him being annoying, but they don't necessarily dislike him being good, if that makes sense, right? Like, people don't like playing against him, but they sort of quote-unquote respect the fact that he's just kind of like playing Street Fighter. You know, it's sort of the same Akuma discussion, except Akuma's top 1. That's a little bit different.
Well, okay, we should finally talk about that, man. We've been hinting it so many times. Let's talk about that now. After the balance patches, okay? So we're back. We're back in present time. Besides the balance patches, the big significant thing that's been affecting the meta of this game is the power of the DLC. We've been terrorized by DLC characters in Street Fighter, and it wasn't like that at the very beginning. Right, we had Rashid in season 1. Everyone was like, he feels kind of mid. His anti-airs are not that good. Then Gachikun discovers the tech, and then now Rashid is everywhere. And then the character also received much more buffs in season 2, much more anti-projectiles, and they just, the level 2 has been so figured out now. It's so optimal. It's insane. And then we have Aki, who you just mentioned, Mir, who received many significant buffs as well. And then we have Ed, who is another character that a very hard character to figure out where his strength lies, that a lot of people felt were like mid, but now huge jumps with his level 2 usage on Momochi's side, discovering a lot of stuff, shot the character up like crazy. Now Ed is like considered one of the strongest. So I guess between Rashid and Ed, those characters are hard to predict because they revolve around their level 2s, and the level 2s just have too much sauce. Like it'll take some time, right, to figure out the power of those characters. Then we have, this is in a row, we had Akuma and Bison back to back, who are traditionally strong characters.
Season 3, babe.
Yeah, they're traditionally strong. One's a boss character and one is Akuma. Our expectations were high for them to be very strong, and it turned out they are absurdly strong and absurdly meta. And Akuma's balance in general is very difficult because his whole thing is like, he's supposed to be super strong, and his only weakness is his health. He's like the only character with below average health in Street Fighter 6. So everyone was complaining about DLC characters, saying pay to win, blah, 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 all the way up to Bison. And now we have Terry, who I had very high expectations being very powerful, but watching the footage and his level 2, might be the thing that pushes him over the edge, but still, it's only been a little bit over a month with Terry and still no giant discoveries found, and he's not being used. Except for Oil King trolling the CPT with him right now. But besides that, what do you guys think about like the whole DLC thing? Do you guys think it was Capcom's intention to make them pay to win, or is it a very strange coincidence of events? Like, what do you guys think about the DLC? Because the DLCs are dominating the meta in this game.
Yeah, I think it was not Capcom's intention to make every DLC pay to win, and because if so, they would have made Terry super strong, right? He's a crossover character. He's gonna get a lot of eyes on him. If that was the philosophy going forward, he would have been busted.
Do you guys think they held? What if they held back Haps because everyone was complaining about DLC, so they held back on Terry this time? What do you think about that?
That could be a valid theory, but then that means that they're fixing their ways going forward if they're holding back with Terry, right? They recognize it's a problem. They recognize people are not happy, so that's probably what's going to happen on the way forward. But yeah, it's not a good look when every character that comes out, like Akuma, Bison, is just running.
That was the brutal part, right? Those two in a row. What do you think, Mir?
That was rough.
I think it's important to see the other side of the coin because I mentioned Aki before, and Aki was definitely not pay to win. And even right now, you could make the argument she's not pay to win, right? She's a pretty well designed character. I think the point and that is important to make here is that specifically for the DLC characters, they are spending a lot of time on each individual one, and that's why we only got 4 per year, right? Yeah. So they have a lot of time to really design a character that is unique and has a lot of like interesting things about them, right? And I think we could say this about all the characters that come out so far, right? Rashid, Aki, Ed, Akuma, Bison. They all are fairly unique in design, and they have a lot of combo routes, for example, unique mechanics in some cases, like Aki's got the poison, Bison's got the bomb, Akuma's got the bullshit. Oh, no, wait, no, that's not it.
Yeah, it's got everything.
But what it strikes me as is that because these characters have so much time dedicated to them because they're the DLC characters, and they can apply all the lessons that they've learned from having released the game and having built all the characters before them, is that they are much more capable of creating a complete kit, and then the kind of like the capability of the character comes out of that being well built, right? So like a character like Rashid or a character like Akuma, because they have such an interesting and well put together kit, they end up being strong. Obviously Rashid, even if you took away his level 2, like it's not like his complete dog water. He's got a lot of things going on for him, especially his Oki is very strong, right?
Yeah.
It would be much worse, of course, but he wouldn't be completely powerless. Obviously, Akuma's got everything. Even Ed, right? There's toning down his level 2, which is what really pushed him to, like the position that he's in right now. But obviously, he has other tools as well, and they're taking those into considerations for the future patches and stuff. So basically, this is a long-winded way of saying that I think the DLC characters have a lot of care put into them because they have a lot of time and experience now with the rest of the cast. And that's why, on average, they ended up being pretty strong, right? And even then, like some of them took quite some time to unlock. Both Rashid and Ed, it took quite a while before people figured them out. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's clear that the power comes from the depth of the character as well, right? Like there was not something that was, so obvious that made them overpowered. The notable exception here is Bison, because everyone looked at Bison and was like, yeah, this character's pretty good.
This character's broken and he's broken. But dude, case closed. Like Bison is so clear.
One, absolutely an outlier. But I think it's, just to finish the thought, it's particularly notable because then you look at the base cast and you have characters, I know that I keep bringing her up, but yeah, characters like Lily, which feel incomplete to this day, right? And it could be because they just didn't have that level of foresight to see how the game was gonna play out, right? And maybe they just didn't know how to really.
Yeah,
like, flesh
Capcom
out
understands the
characters.
meta. They understand how this game is played now.
Yeah, yeah. So like that's my take on why the DLC characters end up being better than than average, is because they know how to design the characters at this point.
Yeah.
So something I want to say about that is, while it is true that they had less time, they've had the entire lifespan of the game after it came out to see how the base roster is behaving, right? And we've had some patches by now. So they don't have as much time with them in the lab, but they have a lot of time to see what needs fixing. And the inconsistencies, when it comes to the similarities between base roster and some of the DLC and their differences in power level, just don't make sense. For example, you have Akuma who can do everything and has every single tool in the game from the outset, and then you have Jamie, whose whole goal is to get every single tool, but is locked behind drinks, and their power levels are just
He's just
worlds
a bum,
apart.
Habs. Come on, man.
Yeah, yeah.
He's just
So
a
the fear is
bum,
like,
dude.
like Jamie can, if he's too powerful, we're in trouble. That would be a toxic character. But then you have Akuma running around.
Oh yeah, because that goes
And
back into the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
here's something else. For example, you have Marisa and Bison. Oh, watch out! Marisa can kill the newer players. We have to like tame her power. But then you have Bison doing ridiculous amount of damage with bomb setups. So all I'm saying is, yes, they had less time, but they have seen how the meta has developed. They have studied how these characters are performing. So giving similar tools to DLC characters and not taking care about the what they're worried about with other characters just doesn't make sense.
We just had the Terry patch. Like, they could have went after Bison there and Akuma there. Like, they
Yeah,
could
exactly.
have. They could have. They had enough months. They know where these characters are at.
Yeah, for sure.
And chose not
For-
to.
For
A blind eye.
For Akuma, I think it really goes back to what we were saying before about like how they really value that Shoto play style. Even though Akuma, you could argue, is teetering on the edge of being just a dirty cheater because he does everything but at this point.
Yeah.
For Bison, I think is the most likely to get a really big set of changes when the season comes.
Yeah.
Like I think Bison is clearly an outlier. I think they had an idea of, we want this character to be very explosive, but they accidentally made him really safe, or vice versa. Like he's both safe and highly damaging, which it can't be, right? And that's why he's become so popular, because
He's like DJ in season 1, man. He's the same thing. He has some weaknesses, and they went overboard on the strengths. But I feel like his weaknesses are less apparent than even season 1 DJ. Mm-hmm. But back to the whole DLC character discussion thing. Like I feel like it's just I think it's just an unfortunate coincidence that two super powerful characters, like top 5 characters, like Akuma and Bison, came out back to back in such a short window, like 2 months away. Like boom, boom, and then the recent exploits of Rashid, and then the discovery of Ed. It was just kind of this crazy, turn of events that really started that whole pay-to-win DLC kind of, discussion. Because it was just, everything was just working out for the characters. Everything just happened at once. But personally, you know what? I don't mind if the DLC characters are even slightly overtuned, because I feel like in Street Fighter V, man, it just made me really sad when like a new character came out and no one was using them. Like I think it's like a new character comes out, and especially in Street Fighter 6, when the window is so big between characters now, right? We have 4 characters a year. It would suck, man, to wait 2 months. We get a character, no one uses them, and we have to wait another 2 months. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's nice to see Akuma and Bison instantly being used in tournament play. Because now look at Terry, man. We got no, except for Oil King trolling once again, because no one knows to take throws. But there's no other characters, right? In Street Fighter V, do you guys remember which characters came out overtuned out of the gate in Street Fighter V? Do you guys even remember?
Yeah, there's barely any.
There's barely any, man.
They played super safe in Street Fighter V,
Abigail,
and I remember
man.
that the discussion. Well, I mean, even Abigail at release wasn't. Like that crazy.
Luke,
like,
but that's at the very end, guys. Doesn't even count. That's like their bonus season. Luke doesn't even count, and he's a Street Fighter 6 character anyways.
But
So-
what was I gonna say? But even then, that would be one out of the everyone.
Yeah.
you know.
There was Seth.
So-
I think Seth was strong.
Well, the thing about Street Fighter V is that they had the opposite, the DLC kind of like idea in the sense that they wanted, well, I don't want to say quantity over quality because that implies that the Street Fighter V characters were not well developed, which is not the case. But you can tell that they were more like, we're gonna put them in the game undertuned, and then we're going to fix them later, right? Like some tried and true designs ended up being, pretty good from the get-go. Like I think Barog was pretty good immediately, I would say.
But that was like
Like
season 1. I'm sure those characters were like done by that point, or close to being done.
Akuma, he got his health buffed, and then everyone started calling him OP. But like, honestly, was fair even when he was released. Like, I don't think he.
I think the worst one was Falk. I think
made
Falk
that-
was their
well,
worst
Falk-
design.
Falk was crappy, absolutely. G was pretty good, I think.
Oh,
when he
G was really
released.
good. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sagat
yeah.
had
So,
problems.
Like, there's Luke, of course, but there's characters that were there that were pretty solid because the designs were they kind of like had an idea what they were doing, but then there were others where they were maybe a little bit more experimental that just didn't want them to be degenerate, and they kind of like just released them to be weaker, maybe because they didn't know what they wanted to do, or maybe because they were unsure of how the characters were gonna turn out, right? Like I think Menat's a great example. Menat got an entire new special move before she was considered playable, pretty much.
Well, but she came out super strong because of her V trigger one was insane before. After they nerfed it, she left. But they look at Kage too. Kage is a character that's supposed to be like Akuma, where he has a bloated kit, and they couldn't get that to work. So I guess in Street Fighter V's case, besides them intentionally undertuning characters, you can tell when they had a faster character release, you can see how that affected the balancing. They didn't have enough time to focus on quality. Like Falk is such a perfect example. But yeah, I guess like I guess what I'm trying to say with Street Fighter 6, I am happy that we're seeing many of the DLC characters being used because of the different circumstances of release. But obviously, we don't want it to pay to win. We're like, hey, we got to play the latest character, especially people that don't want to have to buy every character that comes out. So I totally get that. But it is interesting how the DLC characters are all thriving in season 2 at the same time. It's just weird. It wasn't like that in season 1. Okay. What else here? So now let's just briefly talk about which characters have kind of rose in power and which characters have dropped off, like from the beta test to now, like kind of where we're at. Because we did a recent tier list and we have Akuma and Rashid basically being two of the most dominant characters right now. And then we have characters that were very strong in season 1 and they're still strong, like Cammy, Guile are still up there, Ken. So which characters have dropped off and haven't been coming back, you guys think? Like right now, DJ still needs to pick me up. We still haven't seen much JP. Do you guys remember?
Luke.
Yeah,
Luke, yeah.
dropped off.
Luke. Yeah, Marisa went way down. Way down. Manon is an interesting thing because Manon, a lot of people are requesting buffs and a lot of people consider her low tier, but she's actually been performing very well in tournaments.
She's definitely a strong tournament character because of how explosive she can be.
Yeah, and I know people are gonna bring up item skill, but there's more than just item that's doing well with Manon. There's random. There's actually a lot of, and Tachikawa using Manon as a side character as well. Like that character, as much as everyone says how weak she is still performing well in tournaments. You always see a Manon like in a top 8. She's like there, always there. And so it's interesting. That character is like, I don't know, like a sleeper
the
right
spot
now.
of the low tier Zangief in another game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like how low tier Zangief sometime appeared in, like tournaments and it always ended up pretty high. It feels like Manon's like the same thing, the same boat. Of course, now we still have Zangief, but Zangief is playing another game. So,
Dude,
that's why.
they tried 2 emergency nerfs on Zangief, and then right after the second emergency nerf, like the headbutt one and the knee, we had 2 Zangief dubs on the same day. They had Itazan winning with just pressing medium punch at Cream City, and we had Menardi winning a tournament that same day with Zangief, and plus Menardi already won a major as well. Which one did he win? Was it, or was it the one Cream City the one he won?
Yeah, I thought Mena won Cream City.
Yeah, so Itazan won. Was it East Coast Throwdown?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, yeah, my bad. So what I'm trying to say, guys, is like Zangief's gonna get removed from the game. Okay, because Capcom did 2 emergency nerfs on him, and he's winning even more now. So it's like, it's like, man, forget the DLC characters, man. Zangief is on Capcom's radar. It's dude, it's so funny. So
he's gonna get normalized for sure.
Yeah. So the meta of the game and the characters. There have been a lot of changes from season 1 and season 2, pretty much. There have been characters been moving up and down, but a lot of it is occupied by DLC and by well-rounded characters. That's like the big thing right now. DLC and well-rounded characters. Like, what's up?
Should we name 3 characters who we think are gonna get buffed in the next patch, and 3 who are gonna get nerfed? I think that'd be kind of fun. A little prediction.
Well, yeah, I guess so. Let's so everything we talked about right now, seeing where Capcom's head is at, the trends that they're going after. What I mean, dude, this is like a whole other discussion. We could talk about that, but
just a little teaser, a little teaser.
I think I agree with Mir on Bison right now. He's very like, dude, he's very polarizing on it's not consistent with everything else that they've done. That they're going after characters. Reality. Yeah, they're going after characters like Marisa and Honda, and then you have Bison. It's just, bro, it's insane. I think they're gonna go after Bison. I think they're gonna go after Zangief again for sure. And oh man, I don't know who the third one is. I want to say Akuma, man, I really do, but Akuma's their boy right now, and so I'm not sure. I'm just sure about And then what about Rashid? I don't know. I don't think Capcom's so Rashid. Unpredictable with what they're gonna do. They're not even looking at the character right now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Oh man, the third one is difficult for sure.
I don't know.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna believe. I am going to be a dreamer and say they're gonna look at Akuma.
Oh boy.
That's But in terms of buffs, I think Terry has.
Terry. They're gonna look at it. Even when Mai's released, they might buff Terry early. We'll see.
Yeah, for sure. And I think
Ryu's getting buffed
again.
chance.
Yeah,
Ryu. The patch notes from season 1. They definitely want to take a look at Ryu. They have to.
Like, honestly, the best case scenario, and we were kind of hinting at this earlier, is that Ryu, because he doesn't have a niche, you should get Akuma's Fireball. And Akuma should be getting Ryu's Fire.
Whoa!
Yes. Switch them, please.
Because, like, Akuma already has a niche, and his niche is literally everything. So, like, why should he always also have, like, a stupid Fireball, right? And Ryu is the neutral-based character, so I think it makes sense that he would get a better Fireball. Also, I don't agree that, Akuma's got no hands, so I don't think Ryu should have no hands.
Yeah,
but still, like, the point is, at least that would make Ryu unique, right? At least he has something.
Just in case,
Ryu for sure is getting buffed, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and I think
definitely.
And I think Akuma is getting nerfed. Honestly, like, I don't think Akuma is surviving.
Just so, like, the people listening to this,
right
Mira, I just want to clarify, because you keep talking about Akuma not having no hands. I just want to make sure people listeners understand what you're talking about. So
sorry.
So go ahead and explain why you keep saying Akuma has no hands.
Right. So, okay, uniquely to Akuma, when Akuma throws a fireball, or actually, let me rephrase this in a better way. So whenever a character throws a fireball in Street Fighter 6, what happens is that there is there's a hurt box that appears in front of the character that's throwing the fireball, right? And the reason why this is so that the fireball behaves more like a poke, right? Because the idea is you have a long range attack that you can use to keep your opponent in check. However, if you misspace it or use it at the wrong time, the opponent can contest you by pressing a button, and this will hit your hurt box that is expanding as you're throwing the fireball, right?
Yeah.
And that's the way fireballs are usually balanced. Even strong fireballs like Gal's fireball, who's a charged fireball, still has this feature. Usually OD fireballs don't have extended hurt boxes, or if they do, they're smaller. That's like an incentive so that you spend 2 meters.
Yeah.
Now the kicker is that Akuma doesn't have this extended hurt box.
No, he
at all.
does not.
Normally you extend your hands forward when you do an Hadouken, and that whole hand thing plus some extra is a hurt box. Akuma just doesn't have that, which is not only is it unique, but I legitimately thought it was a mistake because it never happened in the history of Street Fighter.
It's
really weird.
Yeah. Yeah, it is weird.
That's unique. The thing that's unique about this whole situation is not that it has happened, is that Akuma has it. Because I would have expected Ryu to have it. Like, out of all the characters that would have a good fireball, I would figure that all the Shotos, it would be Ryu. But instead, they gave it to Akuma. So Akuma ended up being, paradoxically, the best zoner among the Shotos.
Yeah,
because he has a really good fireball that's difficult to contest and really good normals.
Yeah, he's supposed to be a Swiss Army knife of character, like with high utility, but instead they went too extreme in certain directions where his damage output is some of the highest and his zoning is insane. So basic translation, Akuma's fireball is broken. That's what we're trying to say.
Yeah,
it's broken.
More or less.
Yeah, it's broken.
Yeah, my point is that it doesn't belong on Akuma. And I don't know if it belongs on anyone else, because, this is a really rule-breaking fireball. But if it belonged on anyone, it would have to be Ryu out of all the Shotos, basically, is what I'm trying to suggest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I just want to answer some quick questions that I'm hearing recurring a lot, that a lot of people are wondering and trying to understand, is like, why are characters that are obviously weak, and why is Capcom not buffing them? So characters like Lily, Manon, Marisa, Jamie, Honda, why are these characters not being taken a look at? And why are characters like Akuma, Ken, Bison, Rashid, why are these characters not being nerfed significantly when they're so obviously strong? So it's I can see that being really confusing. The first thing I think should be obvious is that Capcom's philosophy for balancing fighting games is not to not every character should be the same strength. Basically, it's always been like that. So they're not trying to make a perfect balance of every character being like 5-5 across all matchups. There's gonna be some characters that are weaker than others. And would you guys agree that there are characters that are easier to play and harder to play than others? Right? I think that's obvious, right?
Yep.
Mir?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so
there's
because there are characters that are easier to play than others, and that's by design. Like, some characters are meant more for beginners or more for getting into the game, and some are more complex. Because of that, not every character can be the same strength. Like, would you guys feel that'd be really silly if, Lily was as powerful as a character like Ken? It'd be, or Zangief is as I think Zangief is also as powerful as Akuma, but that's what I'm saying. Like, they're Capcom is trying to make sure that the characters that could be really volatile and more for beginners are characters that can't be and never be, I'm sad to say, be top tier. They don't want them to ever be top tier. So characters like Lily and Manon, it doesn't matter how much you guys ask Capcom to buff these characters, they will never be in the spot that you guys would want them to be, which is like top 5. Like, it's just not going to happen. Capcom always had that kind of philosophy of those characters. So that's why it's really jarring for characters like Bison, who is easy to play, who is very volatile. That's why it's strange that they're not taking a look at him through season 2. That's why Mir brought it up, and it's really confusing, right? So
really interesting to me because his game plan is on paper a little bit more complicated than say Lily, because he has the bomb to deal with, but his kit is not built in a way where he's risking anything in case his
Or
game
gives
plan
up
fails.
anything. Or gives up anything
Yeah,
too.
yeah. Like the idea is, okay, well, we're making a character that has to deal with this whole new thing, is new mechanics. So it requires some thought, and as such, we're allowing him to have a high ceiling because of this.
Yeah.
But they completely, well, not completely, but they kind of failed to make him have risk, basically, right? Like a character that is this, the opportunity to just kill you because you guess wrong on a bomb setup shouldn't be also safe, right? That's the thing that's so
Like,
confusing about his
yeah, man.
design.
Look at Ryu. Okay? Ryu knocks you down. He has to make a decision. Does he get Dengin stock or does he go in, right? Or Jamie knocks you down. Does he get a drink or does he go in? But for Bison, he plants the Psycho Mine on you, and he has it on you, and he gets the go in after, right? There's nothing's being given up here. Bison's hard difficulty, by the way, on the character selection screen. I should probably bring that up.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's probably because of the bomb, like
Yeah,
straight
so-
up because of the bomb.
So what I'm saying is, like, okay, even though Zangief is really strong right now, and Zangief's doing really good, Capcom is going after him. They are doing emergency nurse on him. They are aware. They're trying to bring him down. But Bison is barely being changed. So that's why it's strange to me, where I think Bison is so obvious. Like, in my opinion, I think Bison is public enemy number 1 right now in terms of the balance philosophy is being way off. Like, he needs to be taken a look at, because I feel like Bison, his ease of use and simplicity on how fast you can master him as a competitive player, I feel like almost many of the top pros all have a side Bison. I feel like when a character is that good, when you can just have a side Bison, is not a good sign, right? Like, all the successful Bison, like Bison by himself, by the way, there has been no super successful Bison only players, like Problem X, for example. He's been using exclusively Bison, but players that use Bison as a side character to complement their bad matchups, players like Shao Hai having a side Bison, or Kakeru having a side Bison, these players are dominating because of it. And I feel like it's a problem when a character is just that powerful, we could just have him on the side. It's kind of like you guys remember how like Luke was like a side character in Street Fighter 5. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just the fact that Bison by himself is so dominant. It's just that how easy he is to pick up and use. Basically, I think that's a problem.
The way I would put it is that it's okay for a character to be simple, but at the same time, if you are trying to preserve that simplicity in every aspect of their kit, then you can't expect them to be top tier. Breed Lily, right? Like, Lily is a great example of a character that's just simple by design and needs to stay simple, and that's why she cannot be allowed to be strong, which is limiting. I personally don't like it like that. I prefer that every character would have, like a high ceiling. But I understand what Capcom was trying to do. It's like, okay, we want this character to just be simple. That's it. That's our intent design. Okay, fine. But then if you have this as an idea, then obviously when you look at a character like Bison, you basically end up being a very competent Bison player with very limited skills. And that basic level is just way too high as it stands right now, right? Like, basically, I understand that they looked at the character imagining, the really good players will have to really unlock all the nuances of the bomb setups to really shine with this character. But as it stands right now, it's not necessary, because you don't have to play Bison in matchups where that is needed, right? Like, you just play Bison in matchups where he's strong.
Exactly.
And you can just play a really simple game plan.
Exactly.
And that's just effective enough, which cannot stand. Right? Like, that shouldn't be allowed, because they didn't allow Lily to be this way, so neither should Bison be allowed to be this way.
Right. Yeah, exactly, man. I think Bison, they're in a serious situation with this character right now. I don't know if Bison dominates the lower ranks, like looking at it from a ranked point of view, but when it comes to balance design, Capcom strictly looks at tournaments. They don't They even mentioned that the rank statistics are not a big thing. Besides characters dominating in the lower ranks and ease of use, but besides that, they don't really care about those kind of statistics because it's much more complicated because we have certain regions that are dominant with certain characters. So, for example, Zangief is regarded as very high on the Japan side, right? Or we might have another character on that's much more used. Or Ed is another example on the Japan side that is way up on the tier list, right? So it depends on your region and who's dominating that region with what character. But another form of balance too, and this is kind of a weird one that I feel that Capcom's paying attention to is how, and Haps brought this up at the beginning, is how enjoyable a character is to watch, like from a spectator point of view. And so, for example, JP, everyone went nuts, man, when JP was on the screen in season 1. I hate JP. This character is so, you know what I mean? Everyone's spammy. He's a huge spammer, and a lot of people were salty about JP. And a lot of people were bored of seeing so much Luke as well, because Luke, Shoto-wise, he's pretty straightforward, more straightforward than Ken. So those kind of characters were looked at. So I feel like once again, Bison kind of falls in that category again, and characters like Lily are once again a simple kind of beginner-friendly character, and people don't like dealing with OD Spire. Lilies don't like spamming OD Spire themselves. So these characters are just really tough to balance because Capcom, I feel like a lot of people don't mind Akuma being strong. I don't know about you guys, but Akuma is like, it's the lore. And you know, he has low health, so you have to be skillful to not get hit with Akuma. You know what I'm saying? Like, and personally, I love watching Akuma too. I love seeing like the 2-touch kill, right? And you know, Raging Demon setups and all of that. Akuma's very entertaining to watch. He's a character that's safely going to be strong throughout this game's life. So it's complicated. There's the spectator point of view, there is the gameplay point of view, right? There is the design philosophy of how easy a character is to use. All that comes into play with how Street Fighter 6 is balanced.
I will say it becomes especially tricky whenever the character is easy to play, super strong, but people enjoy watching him in tournament, and that's where Zangief find themselves right now. I feel like people go crazy when they see the Geef get loose in tournaments.
I love watching Geef in tournaments, man.
Yeah, exactly.
I do. I love it. I'm not gonna lie, I do. Playing against him,
but he's also super. Yeah, right. He's also super easy, so it's not always clear. And,
if you can do 360s.
Yeah, and we have to give Capcom some credit, right? It's a hard position they're in. Balancing is not easy, and I guess none of us want to sound like, oh yeah, Capcom's doing a terrible job. We understand. It's hard.
I mean, in fact, they're doing the best job by any fighting game developer.
It's true. So far, the balancing in Street Fighter is pretty good.
And I stand by that. But no, yeah, absolutely. To expand on what Haps was saying is that a character, and what you were mentioning too before, Akuma. Again, it goes back to what I was saying, that he is that sort of character that Capcom wishes every character was, right? He plays Street Fighter, but he also has unique ways of approaching situations that make things exciting. So it's like he's fundamentally a Shoto. He's an all-rounder. However, he also has things that are unique to him that let him be, you know, like stand out above the rest, right? Which is what, for example, Ryu lacks, which is what, again, we were mentioning before. So it's like basically the golden child, right? It's so difficult to balance him because he's so interesting. Like, as a person that doesn't play Akuma, whenever I watch Daigo or whoever play Akuma and you see this character really fast, you know, on his feet, moving around the screen, dodging attacks, going in for the throw and stuff, it's entertaining. I mean, you can see that that's Street Fighter. Then, you know, sometimes you see Driver setting heavy punch or whatever, or someone gets hit by the punish counter flame fist and they die. and you start questioning that a little bit, and you go like, okay, maybe those things could get looked at, but the rest of the characters obviously there to stay. And yeah, I mean, it's gonna be really, really tough because fundamentally, if they successfully change Akuma, to still be the character that they want it to be, but remove all the BS, it will still be top tier, right? Because technically, that's exactly why he is top tier. It's because he can play Street Fighter so well. So it's gonna be that sort of character that even if Capcom is successful, he'll always be up there, right? So like the only reason why we would see Akuma be worse than that is if Capcom screws up and over nerfs him. That's more or less what's gonna happen.
Yeah, definitely.
They,
Kakuma in
they've
Street
screwed
Fighter
up
5. Well,
before.
sorry, House. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna jest that they've screwed up before, as we see with Gifa. Let's hope they can do it again.
Yeah, I was gonna mention just Akuma in Street Fighter 5. He finally dropped off at the near the very end, but that was more because they PC became standard for Street Fighter 5, and there was differences on how you can react because of the input like difference. But with Street Fighter 6 Akuma, oh boy, yeah, I don't know how they're gonna do it, but like I said, I like watching Akuma myself. One thing though, when it comes to the balance patches, and we're looking forward to the next big major balance change will come after Capcom Cup, is that even characters that are nerfed, Capcom does try to give them something new. They don't just throw you a lump of coal and then call it and say, hey, good luck next year. They do try to give something. So like Haas was mentioning, there are some target combos that are being just underused for certain characters. Like some target combos people don't even remember, like Luke's crouching medium kick target combo, to his crouching heavy punch. So they're trying, and then his DDT, the OD DDT. So even though Luke was considered super top tier and he got nerfed, they still gave him something, right? And I hope they continue to do that trend in the next major balance patches. Always give something, because it's not balance patches. The thing is like, it's not just about trying to strive for this ultimate balanced competitive fighting game. Another big thing with balance patches is that they're super exciting. They bring like fresh air back to the game, and they bring people back into the game to re-explore. It's super exciting when patch notes come out. Like whenever patch notes come out for anything, I'm sure you agree that like it's so interesting to just even read the notes, even for games we don't even play. It's exciting to read patch notes, right? Like Apex. So like,
I figured you'd say that.
It's like Christmas, man. When a patch note comes out, and you get to go through all the characters, you get to predict what's going on. So, I do still feel like the 1 year is too stale, and Capcom already mentioned they're not necessarily waiting each year, but the small changes, like I said, looking at this, the most recent, probably the last one for season 2, which is Terry. They're just not going hard enough, man. Like, they're just not. Like, but Bison is just unchanged, right? And you look at Akuma and then Rashid. You can tell. It's easy to tell that they have to need some small tweaks. So it's odd when we had that very little patch back in season 1 where they slightly buffed Ryu and Jamie, right? And they nerfed JP's anti-air. And that was after Capcom Cup, right? That was something that should have happened near the middle of the season. But then now here we are again with the same thing in season 2, where they're just not making any significant meta-changing things until after the entire scene is over. So I do feel like season 2 is the bomb, though. Like, it's much more entertaining than season 1 for me. I've been watching pretty much every major tournament there's been, and it's at a good spot. We haven't had insane character repeats until we get more on the Asia side, like on Japan, bro. Those tournaments are sweaty, man. It's like Ed, Akuma, Bison City, but for the most part, the tournaments have been pretty good for a character variety from a spectator point of view.
I just want to sort of take this opportunity to say, like, highlight something positive and go deeper into what you were saying, for example, with Luke. Whenever they nerfed Luke and they removed what made him generally strong, they gave him these, or focus on the tools that made him different. And that's really what I hope happens with a lot of the cast. Even if the people I want to get nerfed, like Geef and Akuma, I hope it's not just like, oh, everything's worse now. I really like when Capcom makes the character have more personality and better ways for the player to express themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, they did a great job with Luke, and I hope they take it further in more patches. Focus on things like make characters unique.
But what about characters like Lily and Marisa and Honda? Like, how can you show your personality on a character that's designed to be simple?
Well, that's a whole other kind of worms. Like the issue
that's
is,
I'm saying, you're writing yourself into a wall with that design.
Well, no, like The problem with that design is not so much that the character is simple, is that the character has no high ceiling because they try to preserve that simplicity in every way. Like they wanted a character to be easily approachable without compromising. Like they don't want it feels almost like to me they don't want people to feel bad that they're not unlocking the full potential of the character, you know? Like they also wanted the ceiling to be low, which is kind of strange decision in my opinion, because imagine if those characters had some very complicated combos, for example, right? Like that's the easiest way of adding complexity to a character without really changing their playstyle very much, is like giving them really complicated combos. Imagine if Lily had some very hard to pull off, like interesting juggles and stuff that didn't require super specific setups. They were just really hard to do. At least it would give something to the people that really want to master the character, you know, something to strive for, right? But instead they didn't even bother with that. Like all the Twitter tech that I see are like all off of super situational, you know, end tiers or whatever that go into strange juggles and stuff. But other characters don't have to do that. You know, they have interesting drive rush
Yeah,
things.
man.
They have corner stuff. Well, Lily has none of that. Honda has barely any of that, and Marisa is just always the same combo that ends up killing you. So I think overall, the way to go for these characters is I think Capcom should give up on just trying to preserve that simplicity in all of their aspects of their gameplay and, you know, give them high
Raise the
skill
ceiling. Yeah, raise the
execution
ceiling.
at least, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but like you don't have to change the
Dude.
gameplay that much. At least people that, you know, like combos, they would find something interesting about them.
Two good examples, Mir, I think, is Luke and Guile. Right? Luke would be is a much more simplistic Shoto. And Guile, he's like, you know, quintessential zoner. But Guile, you at least have perfect Sonic Boom and perfect Flash Kick. It's subtle, but it's there. It's enough to give you an edge. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it helps him do the Sonic Boom loops and all that. And then there's Luke with the charge knuckles, right? As long as you don't have a leggy setup. Well, you have the benefit of these cool conversions that cause more corner carry, right? Landing multiple knuckles. And even though Luke's a simple character, mastering those charge knuckles, being consistent in tournaments, as we can see, is not easy to do. It could be the difference, right? So I think characters like Lily and Marisa need some stuff like that to raise the ceiling a little bit. Make the entry level beginner friendly, but raise the ceiling.
Yeah, actually, I was gonna bring it up earlier, but you know, like the conversation shifted a little bit, but we got back to it. These are like my crocodile tears about Guile, right? We were talking about how the patches are exciting because, you know, like everyone gets new stuff.
Yeah.
But boohoo me, poor Guile player. Capcom just knocked it out of the park and made the perfect character that cannot nerf or buff.
Oh, wow.
My God.
Oh, wow. This is the toll you pay for playing Guile.
No, but listen.
Mir, imagine if you played Jane, okay?
No, like
listen here.
2 years.
No, let me
2
finish.
years.
No, but let me finish. The point is that not that I'm complaining that Guile is such a good character. In fact, quite the opposite. Is that they did such a good job with balancing the way they wanted it to balance, right? Because clearly it's really close to where Capcom wants them to be.
Yeah.
That I'm probably not gonna see anything exciting anytime soon.
He's too perfect.
Too close. Yeah, like legitimately though.
His balance is too good.
Aside from the joking, he's obviously strong, and Capcom wants him to be like that because, again, that's the sort of character they really like. And I mean, what are you gonna do, right? Like, basically, they have to change the entire game to give him something new, which is only gonna happen with like large balance patches, right? So it's that's why I'm saying crocodile tears, because this is like the biggest, like the most first world problem you ever hear.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny because I imagine so many Lily players would give anything to never be to be in your position and never be surprised by a patch again. Just have a stable character.
Smiley face.
You know, but I think Mir's right on the money. A lot of these characters need a slight redesign, and Lily most of all. It's Honda as well. They need something and just spamming the same moves over and over. Some complexity in their simplicity, you know.
The chat mentioned that what about characters that are complex and actually have high ceilings but are still very weak, like Kimberly and Jamie. So that is like a whole other thing where we're gonna have to go much more in depth with like wish list discussions. But they just the problem with those characters is that their ceilings are high, yes, but they have huge restrictions to reach that ceiling because of how they're like Kimberly having the limited spray paint cans and of significantly lower damage, and Jamie being behind this whole drink system. Some characters are definitely going to be hit or miss, where characters like Rashid and Ed or even Blanca with their level 2s just having so much depth, right? Kimberly's not like that, where they have these powerful V-trigger like level 2s, and neither does Jamie. Dude, Jamie's level 2. When I think about that level 2, bro, that character is such a bomb.
Jamie is interesting because as far as ceiling is concerned, I think he's designed very well because there's a lot of, again, going back to the combo routes, right? Which is the most obvious way of kind of like adding variety to a character. Jamie has a lot of really interesting combos because not only do you have to route differently based on the level you're at, because you have different specials and some of the normals get enhanced and whatnot, right? Like he has all kinds of ways of spending extra meter in them to get extra juggles. Obviously, his level 3 is unique because it gives him a juggle afterwards, which basically, like that's a Jamie thing, right? And like Jamie is interesting. It just ends up being in a situation where a lot of his tools are just not worth using. So his neutral is 2 buttons. His driver stunning heavy punch and sweep. That's like literally the entirety of his neutral until he has dive kick. Then he also does dive kick
every now and
because
then.
Everything else is just garbage. So like basically you have to make those 3 normals count really to the max, and that's the big crux of the problem. It's like if you have a character that's designed to be interesting, it's a waste when all of the tools are not balanced well against themselves. Right? That's Jamie's problem. Jamie has a cool, interesting kit, but it just so happens to be really annoying because he plays in a very, boring, predictable way because those are his best tools. So ideally, Capcom in the future manages to make all of his kit, like a little bit the same power level. I really hope that because I don't want to have anything against Jamie visually or like gameplay wise. I think he's interesting. As in theory, because right now obviously he's pretty annoying because he does those 2 things. I truly do hope that they do the character justice because I think they have the design, they just don't have the balance,
Yeah.
I don't really want to get too deep into this, but I would go on to say that it's not that all his tools don't have an even level of power. I just think it's the access point. The price you pay for accessing. Because I think all of his tools, I think all of his normals are fantastic. I think his special moves are all pretty good for their own unique purposes. It's just accessing these and the price you pay to get them and how long it takes you to get them in the match and then restarting again. Just the way you play around having access to these is what's holding him back the most. And I think that's what really needs to be looked at, right?
Perhaps if you had like a sheet with like a bunch of boxes that you need to check marked for a character to be top tier in Street Fighter 6, if you looked at Jamie's sheet, he would be like the best character in the game. Like you would check mark every single box. You know what I'm saying? Like
and that's exactly what I'm saying.
It's weird.
Like he has the things. It's just like accessing, right? It doesn't matter if in theory, like once the character is perfect, like if you play perfectly and the character has everything access to him at the end, it doesn't matter, right? If you have to do it every single round.
Yeah, except projectiles, right, Max?
Right. But that's what I mean by in the sense that he has to kind of like brute force his way in to establish his own game plan, is because when he doesn't have access to these tools, he's just like really limited. And it's a failing point of his design in the sense that it's okay for him to get more tools and obviously expand in capabilities as he gets more levels, but it kind of like creates this situation where it's just too polarizing in the matchups where you just can't get the drinks. and then the other way around when you can. Which luckily enough, there's not that many, but still,
Right.
It's a problem of design.
Well, look at Akuma. Like Akuma, his thing is like, okay, he's supposed to be delicate. He has low health, right?
He's a level 4 drinks all the time.
But like, what? I mean, what if you don't get hit? Like, what if you land the first 2 hits with Akuma, then the opponent's dead? You don't even get to see what his weaknesses were, right? For a character like Kimberly and Jamie, they have significant scaling nerfs to their damage, so there's no way around that at all. It doesn't matter how good you are. You know what I mean? You have to hit the opponent, obviously, so they're gonna feel those restrictions immediately. Doesn't matter how good you are, you don't start off with, you know, 1 extra drink with Jamie. You know, you still have to throw the opponent a million times with Kimberly in the corner. So there's just much bigger restrictions. I will say though that even though Kimberly and Jamie are taking a long time to get on par with where hopefully we want them, at least Capcom stick with their guns and not simply just homogenizing these characters and just making them like everyone else. Like, they're sticking to their guns and making sure Kimberly does not get that reversal, right? They still want Jamie to drink 4 drinks. I personally like that, but because they're trying to stick to their guns with that philosophy, it's going to just take them so much longer to, if we even get this, maybe we'll never see those characters be at the level that we want them to by the end of this game. It's just one of those unfortunate things where it's just really hard to design. Kimberly and Jamie and Honda and Marisa, like these characters, and Lily, these characters are in really rough spots. So
I think it's really interesting, and I just want to highlight what you pointed out, Vesper, where the weaknesses, let's compare Jamie and Akuma, are really dictated by how this game is played. You mentioned that there are rounds where you would never see Akuma's weaknesses because Street Fighter 6 is just a game where once you get the first knockdown, Drive Rush allows you to always apply pressure, even from a throw mid-screen, right?
yeah,
You're always applying pressure. Versus Jamie's whole design is anti-meta because you have to give up. You have to give up your pressure
right.
to do the lift the restrictions.
Yeah.
So I just think it's really interesting how even if we have similar restrictions on characters, whether they go against or for the meta really will dictate their.
Yeah.
Well, what I wanted to say is that Jamie obviously is a difficult character to balance because the intent is, okay, we have a character that starts off weak and ends up stronger than the rest, right? That's why his design is based on 4 levels of drinks and he progressively gets stronger. But they were so afraid of making him become stronger than other characters that it's so difficult for him, especially in certain matchups, because he has very distinct weaknesses, like against fireballs. It's so difficult for him to achieve that level of like being better than your opponent by having, you know, like all your resources stocked, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously there's the argument of, is he really that much stronger when he's level 4? And I mean, admittedly, he isn't very good.
No.
Like,
No.
I think his level 4 is good, but it's not good enough. Is what I was trying to suggest. It's like you do all that work to get to level 4, and it's not even that rewarding. So that's probably the issue, right? Basically, is 110% that he should be at when he is maxed out is not really 110%. So that's probably what we'll be looking at least. If you want him to be limited before you reach level 4, you should be really scary when he does.
Right.
For sure.
That's probably what I would look at if I were to change anything.
So to wrap this up, the next big balance patch is going to be coming out after Capcom Cup, I would assume, right? I don't think we're going to receive anything else now at this point. Even if Mai is released before Capcom Cup, because Capcom Cup is in the beginning of March, right? We got our last major in December, Kings of the World. So yeah, I think it's a very beginning of March. The chat can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'm checking as well.
Yeah, Ed was released on February 27th last year, but apparently he was delayed. So if Mai comes out just before Capcom Cup, I would only see buffs to Terry at that point. And then they'll wait till after, and then they might do some small changes, and then we'll have the giant balance patch for season 2. So
yeah,
we're gonna see what happens. Like once again, right now, it looks like they're trying to bring DJ back up, Luke back up, JP back up, and we're gonna see what they're gonna do with the characters that are much lower, and with even Manon's recent success, I'm curious what they're gonna do with Manon, because they're done with the bug fixes now. I'm gonna see what they're actually gonna do with the character, and then characters like complicated characters like we just talked about, like Kimberly and Jamie, and we'll see how if they're satisfied with Honda and Marisa in the lower ranks, and then if Zangief, if he's gonna be able to handle this third and final wave, and the strength of super strong DLC characters and characters that don't follow the design philosophy like Bison, and big fan favorites like Akuma. I'm really curious where all these characters are gonna end up. And Rashid, man, dude, and Ed, jeez. One thing I am looking forward to is system changes as well. In season 2, and we'll definitely do another follow-up video for that. But yeah, any final thoughts, guys? Like, now that we've talked about the whole history, where Capcom's head's kind of at, and what we'll expect in the future, any final thoughts you want to give?
Yes. I hope that Capcom takes their philosophy for defense, making it more intentional, more precise, and applies it to the offense of Street Fighter 6. Especially when it comes to tools that allow a player to skip neutral, which I think is the core of Street Fighter 6.
Mm-hmm.
And then my final message to them would be, I think they're on the right track. They just need to go harder. Really commit, go into it with confidence, and more often, right? I feel like the patches are in the right direction, but some of them feel underwhelming because of their size and because they're so far apart. I would really like to see for them to just be more frequent and like more intense in the direction they want to go.
Yeah, I think it's well said. Mir?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the interesting thing that I would like to see is just whether or not they are basically going to confirm our suspicions that they kind of like that sort of archetype of character, and how much they're willing to stray from their kind of like original design decision that the game should be played this way. Because the dangerous thing about continuing down that path is that we might end up with the same characters being strong the whole time, which is not necessarily the worst thing, but it could potentially be, like a little bit, like if we do actually figure out that that's what they're going for, we will always know what's going to happen in the future, right? And I think for the interest of the community and for us in general to always be excited about the next new thing, I would love for them to kind of like shake up the meta by changing that direction that they're going for with their balancing decisions. Basically this is a kind of like a call to action to keep things interesting in the future. I don't even particularly care about things being extraordinarily balanced, just because for Street Fighter 6 specifically, we got already to a point where I feel like it's above basically any other fighting game we've ever had. So I'm fairly satisfied, but of course it could be better, but I'm still fairly satisfied. I would just want to see more a different spin on the idea of Street Fighter 6. And this doesn't have to be necessarily character balance. It could be system balance, but just something that, really messes everything up. Like I just want to see some chaos in a good way. Like in a sense, I want the game to be fresh again, right? Because I think that's one of the comments that we've heard a lot about Street Fighter 6, how there's plenty of people that do not think it's changing very much. And I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah.
I would love to see some more change.
Right. There's some characters that are like in really good spots where not too many people are talking about, that you, like you mentioned, will always kind of be strong. Characters like Guile or Cammy or like Jerry right now, these characters, they're not even really being talked about. So while we're talking about this character should be nerfed, this character should be buffed, these characters will probably remain strong throughout the game's life. I think both what you guys said is really good. That I don't need to really add much except for I just wish it's not the arcade days anymore, and we don't have to wait an entire year now to do any kind of changes. There's many esport titles out there that have many changes, maybe some a little too much, but I do feel like adding the frequency and remembering that balance patches are not just about trying to make this perfectly balanced game. It's about the re-exploration and bringing players back and keeping them engaged and always having something new to work on and explore. I think is a big thing, especially for fighting games that are supposed to last for years to come. I really hope Capcom understands that, and I look forward to especially the system mechanics, because those are usually ones that have the most significant changes to the game's meta, is the system changes. So we'll definitely be talking more about that. But yeah, guys, man, that was a really fun discussion, guys. There was so much to talk about. Both of you guys are dying right now. You guys need to sleep. I'm just waking up. But man, there's so much more I want to talk about with you guys. I really want to get into the wish list video stuff with you guys. So we'll probably you guys can look forward to that next. But let us know, guys, in the comments and in the chat on what you guys think of how the balance patches are handled from Capcom, and which characters you guys think need to pick me up or need to be toned down, and pretty much just your overall thoughts on how it's being handled compared to previous Street Fighters. And we'll get back to you and talk about this some more. So thanks again for joining me, Haps and Mir. You guys can sleep now. So take care, everyone.
Yay.
Good night.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.